The moment that orange juice touched his lips, a billion-dollar empire began to crumble. "There's a drug in your drink," the black girl whispered, and suddenly the world of wealth and privilege collapsed around him. The billionaire's eyes widened as he realized the betrayal came from the woman who wore his diamond ring. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. At sunrise in Palo Alto, the morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden patterns across the marble countertops of Ethan Brooks's $10 million mansion. Ethan, still in his silk pajamas, reached for his glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. A morning ritual his nutritionist had insisted upon. His hand froze mid-air as a tiny voice cut through the ambient sounds of birds and distant traffic. "Don't drink that. It's not just juice." The words were barely audible, but they hit him like a physical force. 9-year-old Amara Johnson stood in the doorway, her small frame nearly swallowed by an oversized pink hoodie. She was the daughter of his housekeeper, Maria, who had brought her along today because school was closed for teacher training. Amara's dark eyes, wide and serious, never left the glass in his hand. There was something in those eyes, a knowledge that seemed impossibly heavy for someone so young. "What do you mean?" "Sweetheart." Ethan tried to keep his voice light, casual, but the chill crawling down his spine betrayed his unease. In the kitchen just 15 feet away, his fiancée Lila hummed softly as she arranged pastries on a silver platter. Her back turned to them both. Amara took 3 silent steps forward, her worn sneakers making no sound on the polished floor. "It smells like medicine they used at the center," she whispered. "The stuff that made us forget." Her small fingers fidgeted with the drawstring of her hoodie, but her gaze remained unwavering, locked on the sweating glass. Ethan's mind raced. The center? What center? He'd known Maria for 5 years, but realized with sudden clarity how little he knew about her past, or her daughters. He glanced at Lila, still oblivious to their exchange, then back at the child whose eyes now seemed to hold secrets far beyond her years. "Amara, what are you—" he began, but stopped when she imperceptibly shook her head, her eyes darting quickly toward Lila before returning to his. Setting the glass down with deliberate slowness, Ethan felt the world narrow to just the two of them, a billionaire tech founder and a 9-year-old girl locked in silent understanding. Something in her gaze told him this wasn't childish imagination or a bid for attention. This was a warning. "Breakfast is ready," Lila called cheerfully, turning with the platter in her manicured hands. Her smile faltered slightly when she noticed Amara. "Oh, I didn't realize we had company this early." Ethan smiled back, years of boardroom negotiations making the gesture appear genuine. "Amara was just telling me about a book she's reading." The lie came easily, but the weight of the untouched juice glass between them felt like a bomb waiting to detonate. Ethan paced the polished floors of his study, bourbon untouched on his desk, as Amara's whispered warning echoed in his mind. "There's a drug in your drink." 4 walls of mahogany and leather that had always represented achievement now felt like a gilded cage. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the twinkling lights of Silicon Valley stretched below his Atherton estate, $30 million of architectural perfection that suddenly felt as secure as a house of cards. He'd discovered Amara 6 months ago during a coding competition his foundation sponsored at underprivileged schools. While other executives made obligatory appearances for the PR photos, Ethan had actually reviewed the students' work. Her algorithm had stopped him cold, elegant solutions no 15-year-old should conceptualize, let alone execute flawlessly. 3 foster homes in 4 years hadn't dimmed her brilliance. When her current placement fell through, offering her the guest house seemed natural. His fiancée Victoria had objected initially, something about boundaries and liability, but eventually relented. Now Ethan wondered what else Amara observed with those quiet, watchful eyes. The girl moved through spaces like she was trying not to disturb the air, a skill honed from years of navigating unpredictable homes. He pulled up the estate's network diagnostics on his tablet, scanning for anomalies. The security system was state-of-the-art. He'd designed half of it himself, yet there it was, an unregistered device, broadcasting intermittently from the second-floor master suite. The signal signature suggested a camera, cleverly disguised to piggyback on authorized networks. His fingers froze above the screen. Who would plant surveillance in their bedroom? The most intimate space he shared with Victoria, the woman he'd proposed to just 3 months ago. The woman who'd insisted on handling all their evening drinks herself lately, a romantic gesture, she'd called it. Ethan's mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. The weekly investor meetings Victoria had started hosting when he was traveling, her new friends with convenient connections to competing firms, the unexplained calls that ended when he entered rooms. Amara had seen something, or someone, that the adults had missed, their privilege blinding them to threats hiding in plain sight. The girl had learned to read rooms and people as a survival mechanism, detecting danger before it found her. Ethan set down his tablet. Decision made. Before confronting Victoria, he needed evidence. And to get that, he'd need Amara's help. The next morning, Ethan and Amara sat across from each other at the kitchen island, oatmeal cooling between them. The household staff moved quietly around them, pretending not to notice the billionaire and his unexpected breakfast companion. Ethan stirred his bowl absently, the spoon clinking against ceramic in the awkward silence. "Would you show me how you knew?" he finally asked, the question heavier than the California sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "About the drink, I mean." Amara looked up, a flicker of surprise and relief passing over her face. She set down her spoon carefully, as if weighing her response. "You actually want to know?" The wariness in her voice suggested she wasn't used to being taken seriously. Ethan nodded. "I do." She reached for her backpack beside the stool and pulled out a battered tablet with stickers covering its case. "I've been studying behavioral patterns for years," she explained, opening a folder of sketches. "People have tells when they're being dishonest. Your fiancé's friend touched her earring 3 times while approaching your drink. Classic displacement activity when someone's nervous about doing something wrong." As the household staff continued their morning routines, Ethan watched Amara scan the room, her fingers moving across the tablet screen, sketching quietly. Her eyes tracked movements, catalogued gestures, noted positions. There was something methodical in her vigilance, a system built from necessity. "You're always watching, aren't you?" he observed. She nodded without looking up. "Oh, have to be." "But why? I mean, beyond last night." Amara's hand paused over her tablet. When she spoke, her voice was matter-of-fact, but Ethan caught the undercurrent of something harder. "Mostly, I notice everything so I know if I'm safe." The words landed with the force of a secret weapon, simple but devastating in their implication. Ethan felt something shift in his understanding. This wasn't just some party trick or random observation skill. For Amara, this was survival. "And are you," he asked, "safe here, I mean?" She met his gaze directly for the first time that morning. "I'm still deciding." The honesty in her assessment struck him. In his world of yes-men and social climbers, such straightforward evaluation was rare. Ethan realized with uncomfortable clarity that he'd spent years surrounded by people who saw him as a resource, not a person. Yet this stranger had possibly saved him from something terrible, with nothing to gain. "Fair enough," he replied, pushing his untouched oatmeal aside. "I'd like to understand more, if you're willing to explain." Ethan unfolded the crumpled scrap of paper, his fingers trembling slightly as he smoothed out the creases. He'd found it earlier that morning, wedged behind a loose baseboard in his bedroom, a place no one would accidentally stumble upon. "Look at this," he said, Sliding it across the table to Amara, the paper contained a seemingly random string of numbers, letters, and symbols arranged in a peculiar pattern. Amara's eyes widened as she studied the notation. "This isn't random," she whispered, tracing the sequence with her fingertip. "It's a MAC address, a unique identifier for a network device." She glanced up at him, concern etching her features. "And it's definitely not one of yours." "How can you tell?" Ethan asked, leaning forward. "The prefix. This manufacturer doesn't make any of the devices you own." Amara's voice dropped lower. "Someone's placed a device in your home, Ethan, something that's connecting to your network." "How do you know all this?" he asked, genuinely impressed. Amara's smile was tinged with melancholy. "My third foster family. They were obsessed with online gaming and security. The father was paranoid about being hacked, taught me everything about network protocols. Encryption." She shrugged. "When you're always the outsider, you learn to watch and listen. It became second nature." The door to the study swung open, and Mrs. Klein, Ethan's housekeeper of 15 years, stepped in with a tray of coffee. Her eyes immediately locked onto the paper between them. "What's that you've got there, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked, setting down the tray with practiced precision. Ethan hesitated, then turned the paper toward her. "I found it behind a baseboard in my room. Recognize it?" Mrs. Klein adjusted her glasses, studying the notation with narrowed eyes. "Not one of mine," she said finally, a flicker of suspicion crossing her weathered face. "I keep all my notes in my planner. Always have." Amara's voice was steady as she reclaimed the paper. "Whoever hid this didn't want anyone to notice. They tucked it away, but not well enough." After Mrs. Klein left, Ethan paced the room. "But this confirms it. Someone's been monitoring me, maybe for months." "Or years," Amara added quietly. The realization settled over him like a shroud. The invisible web around his life was tightening with each passing hour, and the enemy, the one orchestrating this elaborate scheme, was closer than he'd ever imagined, perhaps even sleeping beside him every night. Mrs. Klein cleared her throat, her weathered hands smoothing her apron. "There was something else, Mr. Ethan. Yesterday morning, just before dawn, I found Miss Lila in your study. She said she was looking for that business magazine you subscribed to, but—" She hesitated, her forehead creasing. "When I walked in, she jumped like she'd seen a ghost, nearly knocked over that crystal paperweight your father gave you." Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "The magazine! I left it on my nightstand that night. I remember specifically because I was reading the article about tech investments before bed." Mrs. Klein nodded slowly. "That's what I thought too, sir." Amara, who had been silently absorbing every word, suddenly stood up. Her eyes were focused, intense. "I think she's watching you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of certainty that made the hair on Ethan's arms stand up. The trust he'd placed in Lila, the easy, unquestioning faith that had characterized their relationship, suddenly felt like quicksand beneath his feet. Every smile, every touch, every late-night call she'd taken in another room. Had it all been calculated? "We need to check the house," he said finally, his voice strained. Discreetly, "Mrs. Klein, you've been here 27 years. You know every inch of this place. Would you help us?" The housekeeper straightened her shoulders. "Of course, Mr. Ethan." Amara held up her tablet. "I have an app that can detect wireless signals and hidden cameras. Not exactly standard bartender equipment, but—" She gave a small, grim smile. "Let's just say I've had reasons to be careful in the past." They moved through the mansion methodically, Mrs. Klein guiding them through the spaces that Lila frequented most, Amara scanning with her tablet, Ethan feeling increasingly paranoid with each room they cleared. The study revealed nothing. The bedroom was clean, the living room, dining room, even the pool house, all normal. It was in Ethan's private sitting room that Amara's tablet suddenly lit up with activity. She followed the signal, moving like a bloodhound on a scent, until she stopped before the ornate crystal vase Ethan had given Lila for her birthday 3 months ago. "There's something," she murmured, circling the vase carefully. Ethan approached it, remembering how Lila had insisted on keeping it in his sitting room rather than their shared spaces. "Because it catches the morning light so beautifully here," she'd said. Amara leaned closer, her ear near the vase. "Listen," she whispered. In the perfect silence of the room, they heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible electronic buzz. Ethan's fingers trembled as he lifted the vase, revealing a tiny black listening device nestled among the polished stones. His stomach dropped. The device was smaller than his thumbnail, sleek and professional, not some amateur spy gear. Mrs. Klein crossed herself, muttering a prayer under her breath. The housekeeper's face had gone ashen, her usual composed demeanor cracking under the weight of this discovery. "How could she?" Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. The betrayal cut deeper than he could have imagined. All those late-night conversations, the intimate moments, the business discussions, all of it potentially recorded and transmitted to God knows where. His mind raced through every secret he'd shared in this room, every vulnerable moment. "Because you trusted her," Amara said softly. Her words weren't accusatory, but carried a gentle wisdom beyond her years. That's what makes it so effective. Trust is the perfect blind spot. She stood beside him, her presence somehow grounding in this moment of chaos. By nightfall, they had methodically searched the mansion, finding 3 more listening devices. One was cleverly hidden inside the antique clock in the living room, the same clock Lila had accidentally knocked over 2 months ago and insisted on fixing herself. Another was tucked behind a row of books in his study, and the most disturbing one was taped beneath his nightstand, inches from where he slept every night. "She's been gathering information for months," Ethan said, collecting the devices in a small metal box. Each one represented a different betrayal, a different moment when Lila had smiled to his face while planting electronic ears in his home. The question is, what does she want? Information for a competitor? Leverage? Blackmail? Mrs. Klein shook her head. "Whatever it is, Mr. Blackwood, it's not good. Not good at all." Ethan sat heavily on the edge of his bed, the mattress sinking beneath his weight. His mind was racing with possibilities, none of them pleasant. He needed more than suspicions and bugs. He needed irrefutable proof, something that would expose Lila completely, something that would stand up in court if necessary. "We can't confront her yet," Amara said, perching on the armchair across from him. "She'll just deny everything, cover her tracks, maybe even turn it around on us somehow." Ethan looked up, meeting her gaze. "What do you suggest?" A small, determined smile crossed Amara's face. "We let them think they're ahead. We give them bait, false information, something too tempting to ignore. When they act on it—" She left the sentence hanging. "We catch them red-handed," Ethan finished, feeling the first spark of hope since this nightmare began. A trap of our own. The plan was dangerous but necessary. Ethan worked through the night, creating a decoy folder on his laptop labeled Quantum Prototype, Final Specs. Inside, he placed convincingly complex schematics and formulas, all fake, but realistic enough to fool anyone without deep technical knowledge. Hidden within the code was a sophisticated tracer that would activate the moment the files were copied or opened on another device. Mrs. Klein, whose quiet efficiency masked a surprising talent for security, installed motion sensors in Ethan's home office and 3 nearly invisible cameras, one aimed at his desk, another at the door, and the third covering the window. "Fighting fire with fire," she had muttered as she worked, her normally gentle face set in grim determination. Amara proved to be the most surprising ally. Her background in cybersecurity, something she'd mentioned only in passing during their first meeting, became their greatest asset. She created a digital tripwire system that would alert them the moment anyone attempted to access Ethan's personal files or emails. Social engineering is predictable once you understand the pattern, she explained, fingers flying across her keyboard. Lila's been gathering information, learning your habits. We're just turning that against her. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan found Amara sitting in the kitchen, staring into a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The blue light of her laptop cast shadows across her face, highlighting the dark circles under her eyes. She looked up when he entered, offering a tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You shouldn't have to carry this much," he whispered, leaning against the doorframe. "This isn't your fight." Amara closed her laptop, her gaze steady and unflinching. "People like her are dangerous because they think they can't be caught," she replied, voice low but firm. "That's what makes them sloppy eventually. Right now, she's not careful. She thinks you're distracted, wrapped up in wedding plans and business deals, but you aren't anymore." She paused, then added, "Besides, I've seen what happens when people like her win. Not this time." Ethan nodded, a strange mix of gratitude and guilt washing over him. Tomorrow, they would set their trap. Tomorrow, they would know for certain. I waited 37 minutes after Lila announced she was heading to her late yoga class. The basement control room hummed with tension as Amara and I watched the security feeds. The air felt thick with anticipation, like the moment before lightning strikes. "She's back," Amara whispered, her eyes fixed on the monitor showing the guest room, Wi-Fi activity suddenly pinging active. Not enough time to have attended any yoga class. I leaned forward, watching as the exterior cameras caught Lila slipping in through the side patio door rather than the front entrance, clearly trying to avoid triggering the main door sensors we'd installed after the first incident. "Look at her," Amara murmured, fingers tapping rapidly across her keyboard as we watched Lila through the hidden camera. "She's going straight for the decoy folder." The woman moved with practiced efficiency, plugging in a small device to the computer and beginning the file transfer. We'd planted just enough seemingly valuable information, financial records with subtle inconsistencies, personal documents with carefully crafted vulnerabilities, and what appeared to be access credentials to my primary accounts. Amara's face was illuminated by the blue glow of her monitor as she traced the outgoing connection. "She's sending everything to a server in Estonia, bouncing through 3 proxies." Her fingers danced across the keyboard with remarkable speed, the clicking sounds almost musical in the quiet basement. "Got it." I'm mirroring the transmission. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach as we watched the reply appear on Lila's screen. "Phase 2 confirmed. Final insertion tomorrow. Target destabilized." "What's final insertion?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Amara shook her head. "Nothing good. Could be data. Could be something physical. Either way, they think they've got you right where they want you." I straightened, feeling a strange calm replace my anxiety. "Then we let her think she's winning. We give her exactly what she expects. A distracted, trusting fool." "The trap's almost ready," Amara said, her eyes meeting mine with fierce determination. "We just need her to take that final step." I nodded, my resolve hardening like steel in a forge. "Tomorrow, we find out who she's really working for, and why they want to destroy me." The following morning unfolded with a peculiar stillness that felt almost rehearsed. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Lila moved about with practiced grace, her silk robe catching the light as she reached for Ethan's favorite mug. Gone was any trace of last night's confrontation, replaced by the perfect fiancée persona she'd cultivated for years. "Big meeting today?" she asked, her voice honey-sweet as she poured his coffee. Her smile reached her eyes in a way that would fool anyone who hadn't seen her true colors. "I made sure your gray suit is pressed. The one that closes deals." "Thanks, babe. You're always thinking ahead," Ethan replied, matching her performance beat for beat. He accepted the coffee with a grateful nod, their fingers brushing in a moment that once would have sent electricity through him, but now only triggered warning signals. Amara sat at the breakfast bar, pretending to scroll through her phone while observing their dance of deception. She noticed how Lila's eyes flickered toward Ethan's coffee cup, a millisecond of focus that betrayed calculation. When Lila turned to rinse the coffee pot, Amara caught Ethan's eye and subtly shook her head. He set the mug down untouched. "I might be home late tonight," Lila announced casually, gathering her purse. "A charity planning committee is finalizing the gala details." She kissed Ethan's cheek, a perfectly calibrated gesture of affection. "No problem, I've got a dinner with potential investors anyway," he lied smoothly. The moment Lila's sleek black sedan disappeared down the curved driveway, the facade dropped. Ethan dumped the untouched coffee down the sink while Amara was already heading toward the basement door. "She's planning something," Amara said as they descended the stairs. "Oh, I could see it in her eyes. She's not backing down." Ethan nodded grimly. "She sent another message this morning. Check your secure email." Amara pulled out her phone, opening an encrypted app. "This is different from the others," she noted, brow furrowing. "It's shorter, more direct, almost like instructions," Ethan finished, looking over her shoulder. "And look at the routing information." The digital trail wasn't international this time. It pointed locally, specifically to an IP address Ethan recognized immediately. "Marcus?" Amara asked, seeing the color drain from Ethan's face. "Marcus Tran, my co-founder, my best friend since college." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "The only person besides you who has access to everything, company financials, security protocols, my personal accounts. You think Lila got to him?" "I don't know," Ethan whispered. "But if she has Marcus in her pocket, we're more exposed than I thought." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as he stared at the evidence on Amara's tablet. The betrayal wasn't just Lila, it was Marcus too. His most trusted colleague, the man he'd built half his empire with, was working with his fiancée to steal everything. He took 3 deep breaths, steadying himself before picking up his phone. "Marcus, I need you in my office, now." His voice betrayed nothing of the storm raging inside him. 20 minutes later, Marcus strolled in, all easy confidence and familiar smiles. Ethan forced himself to return the smile, to shake the hand that had been metaphorically stabbing him in the back. "Thanks for coming on short notice," Ethan said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I'm making some significant changes to the prototype, setting up a decoy framework that will look like the real thing." Marcus's smile flickered almost imperceptibly. "A decoy? That seems, unnecessary at this stage." "Maybe," Ethan shrugged, watching his former friend's face with new eyes. "But with the Chinese investors circling, I can't be too careful. I'm compartmentalizing access. You'll get the new security protocols tomorrow." Something shifted in Marcus's expression, a momentary crack in his confident facade. "Whatever you think is best," he said, but his voice had lost its usual assurance. After Marcus left, Ethan found Amara waiting in the small conference room adjacent to his office. "You were right," she said quietly. "I traced the signal from that burner phone. It matches the transmission frequency from the bugs in your house. They're working together." Ethan nodded, a cold determination replacing his initial shock. "Then we catch them both, red-handed." For the next 2 days, Ethan, Amara, and Jade worked tirelessly, setting their trap. They installed hidden cameras in every room of Ethan's mansion, created false server access points that would trigger silent alarms, and prepared a fake prototype with embedded tracking software. "They'll make their move soon," Amara said as they finished the final preparations. "Now that you've mentioned the decoy, they'll be worried you're on to them." Ethan looked around his sprawling office, suddenly feeling how empty his life had become. His fiancée, a fraud. His best friend, a traitor. His world was shrinking by the hour, collapsing inward until all that remained was this mission to catch them both in the act, "Let them come," he said, his voice hard with resolve. "I'll be ready." Jade squeezed his arm gently. "We'll be ready," she corrected him. Their eyes met, and for the first time in days, Ethan felt something other than betrayal and rage, a flicker of connection, of trust. His phone buzzed with a text from Lila. "Missing you. Coming home early tomorrow. Let's have dinner. Just us." Ethan smiled grimly as he showed the message to the others. "Looks like we won't have to wait long." The evening air carried a slight chill as Lila's luxury sedan pulled through the imposing gates of Ethan's estate. She arrived precisely at 7, her emerald dress complementing her calculated smile. The security guard nodded respectfully, unaware that every camera and microphone on the property now fed directly to Ethan's private server, capturing every word, every gesture. 15 minutes later, Marcus arrived, his usual swagger subdued beneath a tailored navy suit. His eyes darted nervously around the foyer as a staff member took his coat. "Marcus, so glad you could make it," Ethan called from the top of the grand staircase, his voice warm but his eyes cold as winter. "Lila's already waiting in the dining room." The dining room glowed with candlelight, fine china and crystal glasses arranged with military precision. Lila raised her wineglass in greeting as Marcus entered. "You're late," she murmured, though her smile never faltered. "Traffic," Marcus replied tersely, accepting a glass of scotch from the waiting server. Ethan took his place at the head of the table, the perfect host, inquiring about their weeks, sharing anecdotes about his recent charity work. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, each participant was acutely aware of the high-stakes game unfolding. "I've been meaning to share some news," Ethan announced as the main course arrived. "The board has approved an accelerated timeline for the prototype release." Lila's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "How accelerated?" "Next month, instead of next quarter," Ethan replied, watching her carefully. And I've decided to name it after my father. The Alexander Project." The crystal glass in Lila's hand trembled almost imperceptibly. "You never mentioned that," she said, her voice steady despite the flash of panic in her eyes. "I just decided," Ethan replied, his gaze sliding deliberately to Marcus, whose complexion had paled considerably. "This morning, actually. Sometimes the right decision becomes suddenly clear." Marcus cleared his throat. "Interesting choice. Your father wasn't exactly known for innovation." "No," Ethan agreed, refilling Lila's wine without asking. "But he was excellent at identifying betrayal." The statement hung in the air like smoke. Lila recovered first, steering the conversation toward safer waters with practiced ease, but her eyes met Marcus's briefly across the table, a silent communication that Ethan pretended not to notice. "Perhaps after dinner," Ethan suggested. "And we could review some of the final security protocols in my office. I'd value both your inputs." "Of course," Lila smiled, though her knuckles were white around her napkin. "That's what we're here for." Marcus nodded, swallowing hard. "Absolutely. Whatever you need." The dining room fell silent as Ethan folded his napkin with deliberate precision. "Before we conclude this evening, there's something I need to share." His voice carried a weight that made everyone pause. "I've asked the FBI to audit our prototype's digital pathway." The words hung in the air like smoke. Lila's knuckles whitened around her wineglass, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palm. Across the table, Marcus's gaze darted between Ethan and the door, calculating distances, possibilities, escape routes. Neither spoke, but their silence screamed volumes. From their vantage point in the hallway, Amara and Mrs. Klein exchanged knowing glances. They caught every flicker of panic, every micro-expression that confirmed what Ethan had suspected for weeks. The betrayal was real, and the evidence was damning. "Ethan, darling," Lila finally managed, her voice honey-sweet despite the tremor beneath it. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." She reached for his arm, but he stepped back, just beyond her grasp. No, Lila. Privacy is exactly what allowed this to happen. His eyes were cold, unfamiliar. I think we should all see what I've discovered. Without waiting for a response, Ethan led the stunned group down the hallway toward his office. Mrs. Klein silently opened the door as they approached, nodding once to Ethan. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life at his command. The footage was crystal clear. Lila, 3 nights ago, copying files from Ethan's private server while he slept upstairs. Another clip showed Marcus inserting a USB drive into Ethan's terminal during last week's charity gala, when he'd claimed to be making a phone call. The timestamps were irrefutable, the identities unmistakable. $200 million, Ethan said quietly. That's what Meridian Aerospace offered you, wasn't it? For technology that would have saved countless lives. Lila's perfect composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The debts. I trusted you. Ethan cut her off, his voice raw with emotion. Both of you. With my home, my company, my heart. The soft click of the office door opening drew everyone's attention. 2 plainclothes individuals stepped in, their expressions professionally neutral as they revealed badges that gleamed under the office lights. Lila Winters and Marcus Chen, the female agent announced. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding corporate espionage and theft of classified technology. As the agents recited their rights, Amara caught Ethan's eye from across the room. In that brief exchange of glances was a world of unspoken understanding. The whisper that had started it all had led them here, to justice, to truth, and perhaps, eventually, to healing. The cuffs clinked around Lila's slender wrists as federal agents escorted her and Marcus toward the waiting vehicles. Amara stood on the mansion's steps beside Ethan, watching the woman who had nearly destroyed everything being led away. The night air was cool against her skin, but Amara felt a warmth spreading through her chest, the heat of vindication. As Lila passed, she twisted her head, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled, eyes narrowed to venomous slits. "So it was you," she hissed, voice dripping with hatred. "You ruined everything." Amara didn't flinch, didn't look away. She'd spent too long being invisible, too long being dismissed. "You should have hidden your microphones better," she replied evenly, watching recognition flash across Lila's face. The woman's mouth opened, then closed. No clever retort forthcoming as agents guided her firmly toward the car. When the last vehicle disappeared down the winding driveway, the estate fell into a profound silence. Ethan stood motionless beside her, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion and revelation. The weight of his blindness seemed to press down on him, the years he'd spent trusting the wrong people, building his empire with vipers at his table. Amara wanted to reach for his hand, but hesitated, uncertain of her place in this aftermath. The following morning, sunlight streamed through windows that seemed clearer somehow. The mansion felt different, emptier yet lighter. No more clicking of Lila's designer heels on marble floors. No more hushed conversations behind closed doors. No more pretense. Amara found herself in the kitchen with Mrs. Klein, the elderly housekeeper who had always been kind to her. They worked side by side, cracking eggs, slicing fruit, brewing coffee, finding solace in ordinary tasks. The familiar rhythm of cooking grounded Amara when everything else felt uncertain. Do you think he's angry at me?" Amara finally whispered, arranging toast on a plate. The question had kept her awake through the night. She'd exposed the truth, yes, but she'd also shattered Ethan's world. Mrs. Klein's weathered hands paused in their work. She turned to Amara with eyes that had witnessed decades of the family's secrets. "Angry? No, child," she said softly. "Hurt, confused, perhaps, but not at you." She resumed buttering bread with practiced strokes. "He sees you clearer now than ever. Sometimes that's what we need. Someone brave enough to pull back the curtain, even when the view isn't pretty. Amara nodded, throat tight with emotion. She arranged the breakfast tray carefully, wondering what words would pass between them when she carried it upstairs to where Ethan waited. I heard the door close behind me as I stepped into my study, grateful for a moment alone. My phone buzzed, Special Agent Foster's name flashing on the screen. I answered immediately. "We've begun searching Marcus's properties," Foster said without preamble. "The digital evidence you provided is solid. It'll fast-track the charges significantly." There was a pause. "But there's more, Ethan." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Someone on your board had to have helped him. We're seeing signatures authorizing overseas transfers, money laundering through your foundation's name. This wasn't just Marcus acting alone." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of my desk, steadying myself. "Who?" "We're still confirming. I'll call when we know more." After hanging up, I sank into my leather chair, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. The rot went deeper than I'd imagined. Not just a personal betrayal from Marcus and Olivia, but corruption that had infected my company, my life's work. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph I kept there. Myself, Catherine, and our daughter Hannah, taken at the beach house in Malibu 3 summers before the accident. Catherine's smile was radiant, Hannah's eyes full of mischief and promise. The ache was sharp and immediate. I'd lost so much to trust gone wrong. My finger traced the outline of Hannah's face. She would have been 22 this year. Sometimes I wondered what advice she might have given me about Olivia. Catherine would have seen through her immediately. She always had better instincts about people than I did. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, quickly returning the photograph to its drawer. Amara stood in the doorway, her expression troubled. She'd changed out of her server's uniform into jeans and a simple blouse, but her posture remained formal, uncertain. I'm sorry to disturb you," she said quietly, "but there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you earlier." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please." She entered but remained standing, her hands clasped tightly together. "It's about Olivia, about why I was really watching her tonight." I leaned forward, suddenly alert. "Go on." "I've been investigating her for months," Amara confessed, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "And there's something you need to know about who she really is." I watched Ethan's face turn ashen as Amara's words sank in. The young woman wrung her hands, her eyes downcast. "She tried to bribe me the first time with $5,000 cash," Amara continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I refused, she came back with $10,000 and a threat about my grandmother's medical bills." Ethan paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "What exactly did you see, Amara? I need to know everything." "I was cleaning her office when she stepped out for a call. Her laptop was open and—" Amara swallowed hard. "I saw a video of you sleeping, Mr. Blackwood. It was filmed from inside your bedroom. The angle was from near your closet door." My blood ran cold. Someone had been in his bedroom, filming him at his most vulnerable. "There's more," she said, eyes finally meeting his. "I heard her on the phone talking about leverage. She mentioned having everything stored on a flash drive. After she caught me, she threatened me, but I saw where she hid it, taped behind her car's license plate." Without another word, Ethan grabbed his keys. We drove to the garage in tense silence, parking 3 spaces away from Lila's sleek white Mercedes. Amara led us to the back of the car, and Ethan kept watch while I knelt down. My fingers found the small package secured with electrical tape. Back at Ethan's penthouse, we inserted the drive into his laptop. Folder after folder appeared, each labeled with names. Ethan clicked on his own name first. Dozens of video files, meticulously dated. "My God," he whispered, as we watched footage of him sleeping, showering, making private calls. But it wasn't just Ethan. We found videos of board members in compromising positions. city officials accepting what looked like bribes, competitors revealing strategy. She wasn't just targeting me, Ethan said, his voice hollow. She was preparing for war. This is blackmail material for half the power players in the city. Amara hugged herself tightly. When she offered me money, she said I could be useful to her. Now, I understand what she meant. Ethan turned to her, his expression grave. Now you were meant to be another weapon in her arsenal. Amara nodded, a single tear sliding down her cheek. I know what it's like to be used. My whole life, people have tried to make me into something that serves them. I couldn't let her do that to me, or to you. The days that followed were a tempest of corporate upheaval. Resignations piled on Ethan's desk like autumn leaves, some voluntary, others strongly encouraged. Security escorted Victoria's closest allies from the building, their personal effects in cardboard boxes, their futures uncertain. The board convened emergency sessions, damage control became the priority, and lawyers worked through nights drafting statements that walked the delicate line between transparency and legal protection. Through it all, Ethan kept Amara close, not as a trophy or proof of his redemption, but as a reminder of what mattered. He established her in a comfortable apartment near his own, arranged for the best private tutors money could buy, and ensured she had access to therapy and support services. For the first time in her young life, Amara didn't need to look over her shoulder or wonder where her next meal would come from. You don't have to do all this, she told him one evening as they reviewed her progress reports together. I'm not doing it out of obligation, Ethan replied, his voice soft but certain. I'm doing it because it's right. The foundation underwent transformation too. Ethan dismantled Victoria's web of influence, replacing it with transparent processes and diverse voices. He invited Amara to join advisory meetings, valuing her perspective on initiatives that would help girls like her form a self. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunset paint the skyline in watercolor hues, Amara turned to him with eyes that held both wisdom and lingering shadows. Do you think people can change? She asked, her fingers tracing patterns on the glass balustrade. Really change? I mean, not just pretend to. Ethan considered this, watching a flock of birds wheel across the darkening sky. I think people can choose, he said finally. That's the difference. Change isn't something that happens to us. It's something we decide every day, in small ways and large ones. Amara nodded, seeming to weigh his words. Victoria chose wrong. She did. And now she's facing those consequences. They fell silent, comfortable in the growing darkness. The city below them sparkled like scattered diamonds, each light a life, a story, a series of choices made and unmade. There was peace between them. Not because the storm had passed completely, storms like these leave lasting damage, but because they'd chosen to face whatever came next, together. Even if the rain never truly stopped, they'd learned to dance in it. Ethan stared at the photograph, his hands trembling. Lila's confident smile as she clasped hands with the stranger made his stomach churn. The handwriting on the back felt like a knife twisting in his gut. She's not done. She's not alone. Just when he'd started to believe they might rebuild some semblance of normalcy, this cruel reminder arrived to shatter his peace. He couldn't ignore the implications. Whoever sent this knew about Lila's confession and wanted him to know she was still operating behind his back. He grabbed his phone and dialed Agent Foster's number, pacing anxiously across his study floor while waiting for her to answer. Foster, came the clipped response after 3 rings. It's Ethan. I've received something you need to see immediately. Across town, Amara hunched over her laptop in a quiet corner of the city library, surrounded by stacks of financial records. She'd been combing through donor lists, foundation transactions, and corporate filings for hours, connecting threads that most people would never notice. The pattern was becoming unmistakable. One name kept appearing through various shell companies and indirect donations: Derek Mallory. His financial fingerprints were all over transactions connected to Lila's activities, dating back years before she'd even met Ethan. Amara pulled up Mallory's public profile, a reclusive venture capitalist with interests in pharmaceutical research and international shipping. Several photos showed him at charity galas with Lila in the background, never directly interacting in public, but always orbiting the same spaces, too consistent to be coincidence. She was so absorbed in her discovery that she almost missed it, the prickling sensation at the back of her neck. Amara glanced up, peering through the library's large windows. A black SUV with tinted windows had been parked across the street for at least 20 minutes, engine running. As she watched, a figure shifted in the driver's seat. Her heartbeat quickened. She'd been careful, using public computers, varying her research locations. But careful wasn't always enough. Amara gathered her notes, slipping them into her bag while keeping her movements casual. She walked toward the restrooms, then doubled back through the reference section, positioning herself where she could watch the vehicle without being obvious. When the driver's door cracked open, she didn't wait to see more. Amara pulled out her phone and called Ethan. "I think I'm being watched," she said quietly when he answered. "And I found something big. Derek Mallory. He's been Lila's silent partner for years. We need to meet somewhere safe." Ethan had tripled security at the estate. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and 2 personal security specialists shadowed Amara everywhere she went. What had begun as corporate intrigue had escalated into something far more dangerous. Amara noticed how Ethan's jaw remained permanently clenched, his eyes constantly scanning for threats even in supposedly secure spaces. "I'm not taking any chances," he told her as they were driven to the federal building the following morning. "Not after what happened at the gala." Agent Foster met them in a windowless conference room that had been swept for bugs. Her typically composed demeanor had given way to visible concern. "We've identified Lila's accomplice," she said, sliding a file across the table. "Garrett Voss, former NSA contractor who supposedly died in a boating accident 3 years ago. Facial recognition picked him up at 4 different locations connected to your company's data breaches." Ethan studied the photo. What would Lila want with someone like him? "They're not just after your company's secrets anymore," Foster replied. "Voss had access to classified government systems. This has escalated beyond corporate espionage." Back at the estate, Amara found herself restless. The security detail followed at a respectful distance as she wandered the halls, eventually finding herself outside Lila's former study, a room Ethan had locked after their separation. "I'd like to go in," she told the guard, who called Ethan for permission. The study remained untouched, elegant, cold, and impersonal, just like its former occupant. Amara ran her fingers along the leather-bound books, stopping when she noticed something odd about the spacing on one shelf. Pulling on a particular volume caused the entire section to swing outward, revealing a narrow passage. Her heart pounding, Amara followed it to a small alcove containing a locked cabinet. The combination lock yielded surprisingly easily to Lila's birth date, a detail Amara remembered from planning the engagement party. Inside lay a hard drive and a manila folder labeled "For Insurance" in Lila's precise handwriting. Amara carried them back to Ethan's office, where they connected the drive to a secure computer. It contained years of surveillance, conversations recorded in Ethan's office, bedrooms and car, financial records, blackmail material on board members, and most disturbing, detailed psychological profiles of Ethan, analyzing his patterns, weaknesses, and predictable responses to various scenarios. In the folder, they found a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "You were always predictable, Ethan. Here's your reminder." Amara watched Ethan's face drain of color. "She's been planning this for years," he whispered. "Everything, even our breakup, was calculated." "But why?" Amara asked, the question hanging in the air between them. Because, Ethan said grimly, she knew exactly what I'd do next. The private jet touched down at Grand Junction Regional Airport as the sun dipped below the mountains. Ethan checked his watch nervously while Amara reviewed the building schematics one last time. Agent Foster, a stern-faced woman with 20 years of FBI experience, distributed tactical earpieces. Remember, she cautioned, Mallory's server farm is officially classified as a data center for his legitimate businesses. We have a warrant, but the moment we breach, we'll have limited time before his security protocols activate. Their convoy of unmarked vehicles wound through the foothills until they reached what appeared to be an ordinary corporate facility nestled against the mountainside. Only the excessive security cameras and reinforced perimeter revealed its true importance. "This is where she keeps everything," Ethan whispered. "Every blackmail file, every piece of leverage." Amara nodded grimly. "And our only chance to dismantle her network before she can release anything else." The tactical team disabled the exterior security with surprising ease. Too easily, Amara thought. Inside, they found unconscious guards slumped at their stations. Someone had been here before them. As they penetrated deeper into the humming server farm, rows of blinking machines casting an eerie blue glow across their faces, Amara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the climate-controlled air. "She's here," she whispered to Ethan. They rounded the final corner into the central server hub and found Lila standing calmly beside the main console, looking utterly unruffled in a tailored white suit. "You're late," she said, her voice echoing through the cavernous room. "I expected you hours ago." Agent Foster raised her weapon. "Lila Chambers, you're under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and conspiracy." Lila laughed, the sound hollow and cold. "You can't stop what's already in motion. The moment you entered this facility, a countdown began. In 30 minutes, everything gets released. Everything." Ethan stepped forward, but Amara placed a restraining hand on his arm. Instead, she approached Lila directly, pulling a drive from her pocket. "We're not here to stop the release," Amara said, her voice steady. "We're here to control the narrative. This drive contains everything, including your own crimes, your own secrets. It's already uploading to a secure FBI server." For the first time, Lila's perfect composure faltered. Her eyes darted to the screens where a progress bar steadily advanced. You can't." "We already have," Agent Foster said, as additional agents swarmed into the room. "Your insurance policy just became your prison sentence." As they handcuffed her, Amara watched Lila's mask finally crack, revealing the desperate woman beneath. The woman who had thought herself untouchable was now facing the reality that no one, not even someone with all the world's secrets, was beyond the reach of justice. The headlines blazed across every news outlet in Los Angeles. Child prodigy exposes billion-dollar blackmail ring. CEO's fiancée arrested in espionage scandal. The story had captivated the nation for weeks, with details emerging about how Vanessa had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal company secrets and blackmail executives across multiple industries. The FBI had found evidence linking her to 3 other corporate espionage cases, all following the same pattern: sedation, blackmail, and extortion. What they hadn't counted on was a 13-year-old girl with perfect recall and the courage to speak up when no one else would. At Ethan's first board meeting since the scandal broke, the tension in the room was palpable. Shareholders shifted nervously in their seats, wondering if the foundation could survive such a public betrayal. Ethan stood at the podium, his face showing the strain of the past month, but his voice remained steady as he addressed the room. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for this company," he announced, his gaze sweeping across the faces before him. "An era built on honesty, transparency, and the understanding that we must rebuild from the rubble, stronger than before. He paused, then gestured to the back of the room where Amara sat quietly in a neat grey blazer, her mother beside her. This young woman is the reason our foundation survived. When everyone else was blind to what was happening, she saw the truth and had the courage to speak it. The board members turned to look at Amara, many seeing her clearly for the first time. The applause began slowly, then swelled until it filled the room. Amara ducked her head, uncomfortable with the attention, but proud of what she'd accomplished. 3 weeks later, Ethan and Amara walked through the community garden they'd helped reopen in her neighborhood. The project had been fast-tracked after the scandal, part of Ethan's commitment to investing in the communities that had been overlooked for too long. Amara stooped to pick a daisy, twirling it between her fingers before carefully tucking it into the notebook she carried everywhere. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a whisper that someone finally listened to." Ethan nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. "And sometimes," he added, "the smallest voice carries the most truth." As they continued their walk through the garden, where neighbors tended vegetables and children played between the rows, the story closed, not with the satisfaction of revenge, but with the quiet promise of hope and the fierce peace that comes only from truth finally being heard.